offloaded those at the Naval Weapons Station in Goose Creek, South Carolina. And it took 3 days to offload those torpedoes. And then we loaded exercise torpedoes again that we liked the ones we had offloaded in Key West. And then we just went out and did some local operating area and went eventually back down to Cuba and to our Navy base. And Perry Como, you remember the name Perry Como? He was a popular singer at the time, and he was doing USO shows for the military. And he brought his dancing crews and singing crews and everything down to Guantanamo Bay, where the Navy base was. And I have a picture of me with Perry Como in my submarine. It's in the annals of the Sea Poacher history books. And but they entertained us down there for about 3 or 4 days, and we got to see Perry Como and have him aboard and so forth. After that, we left and went up to Norfolk, Virginia, and did what we call the degaussing, which is they put cables all around the submarine and run an electrical current through it and try to take away the magnetism of the steel hull so that you have the least amount of magnetism in the hull. So we went through that. That's a 5-day process up in Norfolk, Virginia. We went through that. And then eventually after going back down to Cuba for some operating forces, we returned to Key West. And I said there were offshoots from that crisis. One of the things was that from that Cuban situation, the U.S. Navy decided that there may be occasions that they would want submarines to deliver SEALs, the guys that do all the, dirty work for things. They're the ones that go in at nighttime and hide and try to infiltrate the area and remain hidden. And they may be on a suicide mission, they may be on a kill mission, and all sorts of missions that the SEALs have. SEAL stands for sea, air, and land, and they operate in all 3 areas. And but it was determined that a good way to get SEALs into a enemy country was to deliver them at night by a rubber raft carried by the submarine. So for the next 6 months after the Cuban crisis, we spent that entire time perfecting techniques to bring SEALs aboard and launch them at nighttime in black rubber rafts. Of course, they blacked themselves all up with burnt cork and made themselves so you couldn't see them at nighttime. And we participated in developing delivery procedures to deliver those SEALs into an enemy territory, drop them off so they could row ashore, and then we would retrieve them later if they made it out okay. But we spent another year really of exercising and developing techniques to deliver SEALs. But the Cuban crisis itself was quick and dirty. It lasted about maybe 10 days in the time that we had to prepare our torpedoes. But once that ship turned away from going to Cuba with the missiles on board, then the Cuban crisis sort of died away. Now you got to ask me questions and I'll answer them.
Okay. What was your point of view on the Cuban Missile Crisis?
My point of view was that I was ready to pull the trigger. I was one happy dude because I was a weapons officer. It was my responsibility to load the torpedoes. It was my responsibility, me and my men, the torpedomen that worked for me. We had to make the torpedoes ready for the war shots. You don't get chances to do that very often in your career. And I had a chance to do 15, 18 of them.
What was it like sitting in that submarine?
Well, you asked that, and I can handily answer. It was my home for 5 years, and just like you living at home, you have a bed to sleep in, and a place to eat, and a place to exercise, and do the work that you need to do, and that's the way it was in the submarine. It was cramped. I had 3 guys that slept in bunks that were about just this much space between each one. And when you got in, I was in the middle bunk. And so that meant there was a guy below me who wasn't a problem unless he raised his knees up in my butt while I was sleeping. But I couldn't turn over once I got in bed. Whatever position I got in my sack to go to sleep, that's the position I stayed in until I woke up the next morning. And so it was tight. All 3 of us had one lock. Each one had a locker about this big, that deep, to keep everything that we owned in, and all of our clothes, all our skivvies, underwear, everything. And we had one wash basin, and you were allowed to draw 2 different basins of water because we didn't have much fresh water on board the submarine. And unlike the nuclear submarines who can manufacture water till it's running out of their ears, we had to conserve water. We went oftentimes as long as 2 weeks without a shower because we carried our potatoes and onions in the shower room. So, but living was good and it was fun, but it was tight.
What do you think would have happened if the missiles reached Cuba?
What would have happened? Well, we were concerned that if those missiles got to the launchers that were already in Cuba, that Castro was so unstable in his leadership, especially early on when all of his men were out in the woods and hiding from the regular Cuban public. We were afraid that Castro would make the decision to fire those missiles onto Key West. And that was only 90 miles away, and that was an easy shot for those missiles. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason that the United States told the Soviet Union, don't you send those missiles down there to Cuba, because we're not going to let you do it.